For our next big idea, I would like to share some information about the Persuasion module with you. Turns out I'm doing this for basically three reasons. Right? Number one, this is something that I have begun to discover is true this semester as more and more evaluate psychological claims projects come in, and it's something that was true in semesters past. Remember, you're supposed to apply these 7 tips for evaluating psychological information. The last of the 7 tips is, look out for persuasion tricks. And very few students have noticed any persuasion tricks in the websites that they found. Now, I have to tell you that even in a regular semester where we're face to face and we're not kind of doing things from our fingertips here, I do not have the energy to go to every single one of your websites and find out, are there actually persuasion tricks there? I'm just going to assume that maybe some people might have missed a few because they're reasonably common. I'll come back to another reason related to that in a minute. It's my third reason. The second reason is this is going to be one of your short answer questions. In essence, I'm going to ask you to do extra self-references for the persuasion module. Right, so just to give you a pretty good idea of what it's going to be, I'm going to ask you to illustrate 5 different persuasion principles using real life examples. Whether you do them with one example that has 5 different persuasion principles within it, or 5 separate examples. So again, it's the sort of thing you've been doing throughout the whole semester. It's just more of them specifically focused on what I think is a very, very important module. And that brings me to the third reason, and that is the subtitle of the module. All right, it's that we're actually pretty easily fooled by this. So let me make a statement that I probably made once or twice earlier in the semester, so you might remember me saying this. All right? If you think that advertising doesn't affect you, that's exactly what they want you to think. Right? When I say that, it sort of comes out like a joke. But the truth of the matter is, I'm being deadly serious, right? I am completely serious about this. Let's think about one specific company and their advertising. Facebook. Okay? In 2019, Facebook made almost $70 billion from advertising. Right? I'd like people to think about a number like 70 billion. How big is that number? Take dollar bills and stack them one on top of another. 1 inch of dollar bills would be $233. Okay? 69,665,000,000 bills stacked on top of each other would be a stack of dollar bills almost 5,000 miles, 4,719 miles of dollar bills of advertising from one company. That's Facebook. All right, the simple fact of the matter is advertising and marketing work. And when people think it doesn't work, that's just going to make it work even better. So I hope you remember the flexible correction model is one of my favorite theories from the consciousness module. This idea that if you can become aware of these outside forces, then you might be able to correct for them. right? So to not have these things work on you. So how do these things work? Advertising, marketing, and sales. Um, Basically through the principles from this module. Um, um, Obviously, there are other persuasion principles. You could take an entire class on them, but this is a pretty good introduction to the types of things that make people buy things that they don't need to buy, spend more than they need to spend, and things like that. So let me start with a self-reference example of my own. So back in March, when we were first confined to our homes for the quarantine, my daughter Maureen, my son Doug, my son Evan, and I, we had plans to turn the family room into our home gym. Okay? And my wife Karen, kid's mom, she didn't want to do that. Right? Well, it turns out this is 4 psychology majors against Karen. And so we specifically and consciously used the foot in the door technique from the module to turn the family room into our home gym. Okay? The idea behind the foot in the door technique is technically called commitment and consistency. Okay? The idea is that you get people to give in a little bit, to commit first to some small request, right? And then, because people like to appear consistent, if you actually increase that level of request, that level of commitment, they'll kind of go along almost without even noticing it. So it started like this. The first day we just added the kettlebells, and she didn't say anything. So we added a little bit more, and a little bit more. And now our family room looks like this. So we there successfully used the foot in the door technique to turn our home into the home gym that we always wanted. You might want to do things like this too. Or you may want to discover when people are doing these things to you. So as we're approaching the end of the semester, you realize, hey, if you want to use these things, if you want to use these principles, the first step, this is the whole point, one of the points behind self-references. The first thing to do is to recognize it in your own life. So that's what I want you to be doing on, as I said, the one of the short answer questions for the third exam. Robert Cialdini, if you remember reading the Persuasion module, he actually appeared quite frequently in there. I did a search for his name once, and I think he showed up something like 12 to 15 times. He is actually one of the world's leading experts on persuasion. He's a psychology professor at Arizona State University, and I've had opportunity to see him give talks quite a few times over the years. And he often begins his talks by telling why he decided he wanted to become an expert. Okay? The reason is because he kept falling for the tricks. So he was such an easy mark himself that he wanted to become an expert on this so he could figure it out, so he could become resistant to them himself. The reason I'm telling you that is because I'm going to tell you about myself before I learned these principles. Back when I was in graduate school, I bought a $1,200 vacuum cleaner from a door-to-door salesman, and it was essentially an application of many of the principles from this module. Okay? So here, think back, this is about 1991, say. Okay, I had an atypical graduate school life because my wife and I got married after my first year of graduate school. So we didn't live like graduate students. She had a full-time job, and we bought a small house about 10 miles off campus. And so we're living like, a young family. And so I'm working at home one day, and I hear a knock at the door, and step one is being sprung on me. Somebody who begins to establish himself as somebody that I can trust by using not the whole triad of trust, but one key part of it, the likability part, right? An extremely friendly young man, okay? Just really, really, really nice. And the idea, of course, is that by some combination of these three factors, establishing yourself as somebody friendly and likable, somebody who appears honest, and somebody who kind of knows what they're talking about, we kind of begin to trust them a little bit. Okay? So there's step one. Step two, until he cleans me out of house and home with the $1,200 vacuum cleaner, it's the rest of the module. Not the whole rest of the module, but the one specific section toward the end where they give descriptions of what they call the other tricks of persuasion. So what I'm going to do for the last few minutes here is I'm going to show you how he used every one of those techniques to get me to buy this vacuum cleaner. So, first, free gifts, and reciprocity. He literally gave me a roll of paper towels. I take the roll of paper towels from him, look kind of stupidly at him and say, "Thank you. Won't you come in?" He probably knows I'm already hooked, but we're not there yet. It's remarkable. They can give you something virtually worthless, a roll of paper towels, and it gives that just a little feeling that you're supposed to repay them. It is a universal human norm. In other words, every culture in the world has this. If somebody does something nice for you, you're expected to do something nice back to them, for them, right? Now, I'm not saying everybody does it, but again, it's the expectation, and so many people will give in at that point. So, I got him in the house, and he starts to tell me what he's selling. He's obviously selling vacuum cleaners, so he's going to use a little bit of social proof, right? Social proof. One way you can kind of figure out what you're supposed to be doing is you look at what other people are doing. Right? Very, very similar idea, really the same thing, to social norms that you might remember, or descriptive norms you might remember from the conformity module as well. See, the vacuum cleaner was a brand called Kirby. Kirby's were very, very popular throughout the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, especially. And many households had them. So he said, "Did your mom have a Kirby when you were growing up?" And I said, "Yes, in fact, she did." So this is an actual picture of my mom. No, it isn't. It's just a random picture that I found on the internet. But yeah, so I think what's going through my mind back in 1991 is, it's good enough for my mom. Yeah, I kind of remember the house being pretty clean back then. Must be good enough. Must be a good vacuum cleaner. So we got free gifts and reciprocity. We got social proof. Now, the foot in the door / commitment and consistency idea. Keep in mind, letting him in, that was kind of my first commitment. Okay, so really with the very next thing he did, he already was starting to increase the level of request. The way I like to think about it is imagine that you're standing in quicksand. The quicksand is commitment. Okay, and as soon as you let him in, you're already up to your mid calf. Okay, you ever gotten stuck in really, really deep mud? If that mud is already up to your calf, it's already hard to get out. Okay, but we're going to sink a little bit deeper. Okay, so he pulls out a jar of dirt and he says, "Can I demonstrate this wonderful machine for you?" So of course I say yes. I'm now up past my knees. Okay, he pours the dirt all over my living room floor and proceeds to vacuum it up. Okay. All the while, I'm up to my waist now. I'm sinking pretty close to chest deep by now. Okay. Oh, by the way, when he pours the dirt, he only pours it in one part of the living room, but he vacuums the whole living room. So he just did you another favor. So yeah, this other feeling of obligation from reciprocity. But after vacuuming that room, he goes on to the other room, and 25 minutes later, this guy is literally vacuuming the mattress in my bedroom. And I am completely submerged, right? Quicksand all around me. I am fully committed here. He knows at this point that he's going to make the sale. Now he just has to figure out how many dollar signs he's going to get out of me. Is it going to be 3, 4, 5, or 6? Right? So then he's got the, and that's not all. Hey, if you're really impressed by this rug shampooing attachment that we have, I'll tell you what I do. I'll throw it in for free. I'll throw it in for nothing. Rug shampooer, right? Normally $250 value or whatever it is. Okay. So there's our, and that's not all. Now it's time for the door in the face. He's about to go in to make the sale. So he tells me what the price is, and the price is $2,400. And at that point, I'm like, no. I'm a graduate student. There's just no way I can afford this. And the truth of the matter is, he has no intention whatsoever of getting $2,400. If he did, of course he would take it, and then he would call the rest of his salesman friends and say, "Hey, you better go to this guy's house. He's the biggest idiot who ever lived." But what he's doing is this door in the face technique. You're going to make an outrageous offer, one that is almost sure to be rejected. Okay, nope, $2,400 is too much. So then he's going to come back in with the real price. He says, "Oh, too much for you? Well, let me, I think actually we're having a sale, and the sale starts next week. It's going to be 50% off. Let me call my manager." You can do me another favor here, by the way. Let me call my manager and see if I can get him to allow me to offer the sale price today. All right, so he makes the call. I'm in luck. I could have it for $1,200. Yeah. Last two ideas here. Yeah. Sunk cost. He's been in my house at this point for probably about an hour. That's on purpose. Right. When you go to buy a car and they keep you in the dealership for an hour, that's on purpose, right? Because that feels like an investment, okay? And we don't want to give that investment up. And so we feel like we kind of have to follow it through. We almost feel like we're being stupid if we don't buy something after we've been there for so long, okay? That's the sunk cost trap. And then, of course, finally, scarcity. But I can only get this price if I buy it today. Right? This will not be available tomorrow. Any one of these can work pretty effectively. And when you add all 7 of them together, particularly when you repeat one multiple times, he did several favors for me. So we had this reciprocity going a few times. And then the pretty extensive gradually escalating commitments with the foot in the door technique led me to be the proud owner of a $1,200 Kirby vacuum cleaner. Okay. So you may not have a single example that's this extensive, but that's not necessarily what I'm asking you to do, right? On this test question, you're just going to find 5 concepts like these. Maybe you got a social proof example. Maybe you got a sunk cost trap example. Maybe you got a scarcity example. Maybe you have a triad of trust example. Maybe you have an example of trigger features, or the central route to persuasion, or the peripheral route to persuasion. Any vocabulary words from this module, it's really nothing more that I'm asking you to do than, instead of doing 2 self-references for this module, I'm asking you to do 5. Okay? So that is the end of this. And as usual, thanks for watching and listening.